Welcome back, everyone. This is Into the Nexus, the podcast all about Heroes of the Storm. I'm Garrett Weinzierl, here as always with Kyle Fergusson. And Kyle, it's a special episode today.
It is very special.
We're rectifying a great wrong.
A great wrong.
We today are having a wonderful guest today, a guest by the name of CavalierGuest, who I could have sworn had been on the show on one of the episodes when I was traveling. But a quick Google search proved that to be wrong, so please welcome everybody. CavalierGuest, welcome to the show, dude.
Thank you for having me, finally. I thought I had been on Into the Nexus as well, but apparently I had not, I'm really excited to be here.
You 5-stack with Kyle, so you probably had all of the same conversations you would have had if you had appeared on the show anyway.
This is true. Kyle and I have known each other for quite a while, actually. Way back when he invited me onto his Duo Q interview stream. Yeah, we played a game while talking about HOTS, and it was pretty interesting. But I don't know.
I remember it was Blackheart's Bay, and you were telling me about how Johanna should soak. That's how long ago this was that I had to be informed that Johanna could soak.
We also talked about how Arthas can offlane on Towers of Doom, and that you need an offlaner in a draft. This was a new concept at the time.
It's a little important.
That is, well, you know, for some people that might not be foreign information, and I'm glad we have you here to catch everybody up. This show. I mean, I hope so. I hope so.
On a normal day, 50% of this show is offlane main, and today it's 66% of the show.
That's right.
Is offlane main.
And for the NA team, my Heroes Lounge team, CavalierGuest plays offlane, so the two of you can talk.
Yeah,
and reminisce
you can leave now, Kyle. CavalierGuest and
okay.
I are just gonna sing the sweet, sweet praises of playing by yourself against the other person that's playing by themselves in a game of Heroes of the Storm.
Before I go, I want to ask you both: how does it feel to have nobody make use of the XP you make? What is that feeling inside?
It varies. Because sometimes people are like, why aren't you coming to fights? And I actually had a game in SL when I first came back, a couple weeks into coming back into playing HOTS. And I was duoed with Cascon, actually. And because the Diva kept rotating away and I was playing Leoric, I eventually got both mid and top forts just because of minion pressure, because Diva wasn't clearing the waves and I was constantly clearing them. And my team, who was inting, was like, why did we win that game when we lost every fight? And I was like, I don't know. It's a mystery.
That's very humble of you.
So it depends, you know?
My answer in pickup games is usually because the number for their level is bigger than ours. That's usually my answer to why aren't I joining the fight. That's usually
there is in fact a scoreboard at the top that tells you how well you're doing overall.
If I could just gesture silently to the top of the screen, I would. But yeah, so if folks are unfamiliar with you, Cavalier, you're a Heroes of the Storm analyst, you're a coach, you're currently part of the Nexus Schoolhouse.
Mm-hmm. And I've been told to shout out the Nexus Schoolhouse. It's a Discord where people can come and sort of learn about HOTS, talk about HOTS, but also Zane Hyde and I produce educational content together over at patreon.com/Nexus Schoolhouse. And we're trying to do as much as we can with that. Zane is actually learning to edit videos, and I'm writing scripts and giving him the audio, and then he puts the video together. And it's been a process. Sometimes his internet goes out, but we're trying to be more consistent with it. We'll get there.
You're experiencing what the world is experiencing in 2020. Sometimes the internet goes out.
Now you're also doing coaching currently for one of the CCL teams.
Yeah, I'm the coach for Oxygen Esports. I got in touch with Oxygen when CCL when the orgs were announced. And I basically immediately got picked up by Steve 3 or 4 weeks before the actual draft day. And I had already been watching in-houses, so I wasn't actually intending to scout. I was just streaming the in-houses for fun. But that ended up being really valuable scouting information. And I was responsible for the questionnaire that we developed to decide, who's going to be compatible on a team together. And I was largely responsible for picking up the players, although it was a group effort, especially after we got our first picks into comms and had their feedback.
That's very cool. That's very cool. What do you look for to make a team that is functional?
The out of game roles are honestly the most important things. Obviously, you need a tank player. Obviously, you need an offlane player. Obviously, you need a ranged, a flex, and a healer. Everyone sort of knows that. But you really need a shot caller, someone who is capable of keeping the game in their head and calling things. Distributed shot calling is something that some teams have tried in the past with varying levels of success, but generally it takes a very long time to get to the point where that kind of structure is successful. And it's really nice to have someone whose word is final. Like they make a call and you're like, okay, well, this is the call now. Whereas other people can suggest things, but if it gets countermanded, then you're not doing it. So having a shot caller, I think was actually the most important thing. And then having a drafter. And Oxygen did something a little bit different. I think, as far as I know, we're the only team to do this, and we're only the second team to do it in competitive heroes, as far as I know, because the first one was Gen G with Noblesse. We have an out-of-game drafter. Cascon is the main drafter, in addition to being the sixth player for Oxygen Esports.
Interesting. Are they allowed in comms during the draft?
We're allowed in comms during the draft, and we Discord stream the draft so that we can, see what the players are saying for the picks. And then after the draft is over, we have to leave comms.
That's fair, because if you were watching the cast of the game, it might be delayed, but also you wouldn't see your own players hovering things.
Yeah. So it's really nice. I understand why Gen G did so well with it, because when players get into a game, if they lose, if they blame the draft, it's not like one person in the game is feeling down because I messed up the draft and I lost. It's someone out of the game who's like having those thoughts, and they can just focus completely on the game. It's really nice. But also drafting in Heroes of the Storm is very difficult. I don't know how many people remember Splendor, who was a support in EU HCC, but he compared it to chess boxing, where you have to do this incredibly intellectual activity and then go do a very physical thing, and then just incredible intellectual activity and then go do a physical thing. And the back and forth can be very stressful. Also, prepping drafts is essentially a full-time thing that you need almost as much time to do as you need to practice the draft themselves. So when it gets put on one player, that player is doing twice as much work as everyone else. That's not really optimal.
Wait a minute. So is it insane that we ask people who learn to play the game in maybe Quick Match or ARAM to conduct themselves well in a draft for rank points?
I've always thought so, but on the other hand, and this has been statistically proven, this is not an opinion, draft doesn't matter as much.
Okay.
In ranked games. Then the thing about drafting in competitive is there's more coordination. So you can draft one thing that just goes and counters someone on the enemy team, and that's all they're doing for the whole game. And every other responsibility on the map is being handled by the other four people. But that doesn't really happen in Storm League. Even at the Grandmaster ranks, I'm good at this hero, I'm going to play it because I like playing it. I don't care that there's bad matchups in their team. And, if I go do my thing, like let's say you're picking amateur opponent Artanis on Hanamura and you want to do camps all game, but everyone thinks you're going to go offlane. Well, you're not going to do camps, or you're going to miss all that soak and do camps anyway. And maybe someone goes and fixes it. So it's not, draft is not as important in Storm League as it is in competitive. And I think people who haven't played competitive really underestimate how important drafting is in competitive.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we frequently talk about the difference between coordinated and uncoordinated play, and typically it's competitive versus pickup games at home and whatnot. So, do you kind of put your brain there a lot too? Because you do a lot of coaching. Like, do you have like a short questionnaire when you pick up students? Like, what all do you kind of take into account before you have a coaching session with someone?
So I ask them what their goal is. Some people, they want to climb ladder. They just want to be better on ladder, and I can help them with that. Of course, if you want to climb ladder and you want to learn to outplay people, there's tons of bronze to GM VODs that you can go watch. Every single role has been played from bronze to GM by various streamers, and you can learn how to punish mistakes. The way you climb in Storm League is you make some proactive plays in terms of the way you manage the map. pinging camps, getting camps out at the right time, making sure waves aren't missed, ping when a wave was missing, and like try to ping someone to go to the wave. This works a surprising amount of the time the way. If you ping someone, not spam ping, but like ping one person that you think should be going to a lane and then go ping the lane, a lot of people will actually go soak the lane. Or they'll go to a camp or whatever. And that's kind of shot calling, right? Michael Udall, who has the record for most rank points ever, 30K club in a season, actually got there by shot calling. And he would like make a joke at the beginning of draft to get everyone relaxed. He would be like, "Hey guys, you want to join comms?" And people didn't join comms. He would just ping a lot. That's Heroes of the Storm is a team-based game. Getting your team all on the same page is a really good way to win. But there's mechanical things you can do to optimize. But a lot of the bronze to GM climbs are just looking for mistakes the enemy team is making and trying to punish them as hard as possible. Because people make a lot of mistakes and they don't realize their mistakes because they're not being punished at those ranks. So if you learn to punish those mistakes, you can climb. But if you want to be on a team, if people come to me and like, "Hey, our team sucks. How do we be better?" It's very different. One of the things that you should always do when you first start an amateur team is, what are our hero pools? What are our roles? What can we play well? Okay, does someone need to learn a hero for these styles of drafts? And I coach teams that have Asmodean mains, and Asmodean's not in a great place necessarily, but you can make him work as long as you play to the constraints of your draft. Don't try to play comps that you think are quote unquote good that you can't execute because you don't play those heroes, right? Decide how hard you want to go, like how much of your team is for fun versus how much are you actually tryharding. If you're tryharding, you might need to learn a hero that you don't actually enjoy playing, and it's going to get picked for you. But if you're only playing for fun, these are the drafts you can play with the heroes you already know that you think are fun. That's a process I go through whenever I coach a team.
When it comes to kind of the roles and when you get into that mindset, it makes me think of something we talk about on here a lot of times when we give advice to folks that are looking for it, and when they write in and ask us questions about, should I learn something new? Should I stick with what I'm going for? A lot of it comes from a place of, at least in the at-home game, what's currently popular, what's getting banned out, what's getting picked. A lot of times we hear from folks who feel like they can't pick what they want to play. Where do you go from there? Because we a lot of times kind of focus on, all right, well, what fills a similar role or has a similar kit, and maybe in a perfect world, maybe it kind of has both, so you can kind of connect the dots. But sometimes that like doesn't happen. Like if someone writes in and says, "Oh, I mean, I don't." Well, this is a bad example because I don't know who the hell is how contested Lost Vikings are, but use that as an example of an extremely unique type of hero to play.
They're banned a lot of GM. I can.
Yeah. That's I'm talking. But
so my answer to that question is every single hero in the game has been one trick to Grandmasters by someone at some point throughout the game. But Nova and Greymane are very different heroes, and Nova's quite a bit worse than Greymane for most games. And there was a player in EU way back when who got to GM spamming nothing but Nova, literally a Nova one trick, and then got to GM number 1 playing nothing but Greymane. And that's the difference. If you play a better hero, it's going to be easier to climb and your peak is going to be higher. But you can just play one thing if you really want to. Your teammates might get mad at you. They're playing a hero they don't think is viable. But every hero in the context of ladder is pretty viable. It's just a question of, is it easier or is it harder? And if you really enjoy playing a hero, you're willing to put more time into perfecting them. So for you, that hero will be better, even though maybe on average that hero is worse. It's one of the reasons Ghost Dunk did an analysis way back when, where he proved that a level 1 hero for a given player had essentially an MMR penalty. And then as you leveled up playing the hero, your MMR got better to a point, and then it was at the level of you as a player. But there are one tricks, who are insane. Psalm actually, not Psalm, Priz tweeted like a couple weeks ago, quick match players are insane, or quick match players are better than Stormling players. Everyone thought he was flaming Stormling players. It's actually not the case. What happened is we were actually playing quick match together, and we ran into some one tricks. And the one tricks were doing things that were obnoxious. He was playing Zeratul, and there's a little circle over the head when Uther pops Benediction, which is this level 16 talent that allows him to cast 2 of his abilities in a row because it reduces the CDR. This Uther popped a Benediction out of vision so that when Priz blinked in, he thought he was only going to get stunned once and he could medallion and blink out. He got stunned twice and died because he didn't know Benediction had already been popped. And then
that's such a subtle. Oh my God, what a jerk. What a genius. That's one of those I'd be mad if I wasn't impressed scenarios, right?
Yeah.
Except he was probably also mad.
And then the next game he was playing Varian, and we were up against the Samuro, and the Samuro microed his clones to kill his banner every time he put the banner down.
That's
so because the clones like can kill the banner relatively easily, so he would just micro the clones over and kill the banner every single time it went down. Now, you get the banner at 16. This was Garden of Terror. The game lasted level 25. When I say every single time, I mean every single time. So
it gives me anxiety thinking about as someone who's tried and failed many times to make Samuro a main pick of mine. That's work. That is control.
And I checked after the game, and the guy was like a level 400 Samuro, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So you will get better. There's always subtle mechanical things you can do to improve its specific heroes. There's always outplay potential around when you activate abilities and vision. There's always matchup specific knowledge that will help you. And you're not going to learn that unless you either grind the games yourself or do what I do and just talk to a lot of one tricks. Every time I find a successful one trick, I'm like, hey, can I talk to you about the hero? And that's how I cheat and figure out more stuff about the game without actually having to do it myself.
I mean, that's proactive of you, I think is a better word than cheating.
I prefer to think of it as cheating, but sure.
Yeah.
Well, if I may make this intensely personal for myself, how does one get into Masters when you have a focus on punishing mistakes? So like Diablo, or maybe Urel, but particularly Diablo, the mistakes dry up as you get to Diamond 1. So do you just start you're walking by a wall and my whole team is here kind of dynamic level mistakes? Do I just start charging anything that's touching a wall and assume that I will be successful because the mistake was already made, but it's not as good as the previous mistakes were in lower leagues?
So there's a concept in particular to tanking called gating. And gating is you let some people through and not others. So a lot of people, even in CCL, don't check every bush they walk by. So if you're a tank and you're set up in a bush that's relatively far out, people won't check it because they don't expect you to be there in the first place. And then you can usually see the tank walking by to the objective. And then the DPS walks by the same bush because they're like, the tank didn't get ganked. So this is clearly safe. And then you kill the DPS by yourself with an APOC combo. Or something similar to that. You can actually, I don't know how many people know this, but Kepi, Qepi, I think that's his name, is a Korean grandmaster who's currently grinding on the NA ladder. And I ended up in some games with him, both with and against him. And he farmed my team doing this when I was on it. And we farmed the enemy team when I was on his team. I would like ping invades as arranged, and he would be on tank, and we would be like, okay, let's go invade the camp. And then we would kill 3 people and take the camp away from them.
So I have to, so it's more that it's a proactive investigation, and lack of activity, maybe like your bush scenario that I'm making choices about. I have to choose more about what I'm targeting.
You do. Okay. That's how you win, because you in competitive Heroes of the Storm, the tank almost always it's pressured out or dies first because every flank is controlled. Vision is always checked, so ambushes aren't a thing. Waves are pushed up so that you don't have free vision in a lane from just minions. And at that point, there's just the tank in front of you and everyone else is safe. So you don't really have a choice. You got to focus the tank down. There was an EU meta during HEC that focused exclusively around killing tanks because no one else could be caught. It just wasn't possible. But in Storm League, that doesn't happen. You can just kill backliners for free if you just play out of vision as a tank. it's not reasonable in my mind. But the reality is that if you tune into GM streams, you'll see it happen every day.
I've got another insanely specific question for you along this line.
Okay.
Let's say I'm Garrosh and I sit in a bush and my whole team is like, Garrosh is in a bush. I want to be a part of this bush. So we're sitting there, maybe on Battlefield of Eternity, for instance, and Muradin walks straight into my bush. Now, my Storm League team will get upset at me if I throw Muradin and do anything to him at all. But now my bush is exposed. So there's not a chance for me to get somebody else who might walk by. What is the correct choice?
Oh, you leave.
Oh. You just say, I got not a successful bush. Let's get out of here.
Tanking is hide and seek. You're trying to hide from the enemy team and you're trying to seek them, and then they're trying to hide from you and seek you. And if the wrong person finds you, you're like, good job, you got me. And then you leave and you go hide again.
I guess in that scenario, then I should not disengage him because that'll upset the team. It's better to just walk away.
I mean, you can throw him away if you think there's actually some risk to yourself. Also, this is specific to Garrosh, but one of the major mistakes that Garrosh players make is they're actually really good at playing him in lane. Because during the laning phase of the game, you can walk up to people and throw them and hit the Q, and your team focuses them and they die. This is picks, playing for picks. But in team fights, it's frequently better to actually throw people into clumps and not into your team. So that's a different dynamic that not a lot of people actually do, in my experience. Like if you have Mephisto or a Jaina or a Kael'thas or something, and you throw them into a clump, then that hero can get a lot more advantage from that than they can if you just throw them into the team and then you just blow your cooldowns to kill one person.
That makes sense. Garrett, I'm done. You good?
Yeah, I was going to say enough about Kyle's bush. We've mentioned proactive and reactive multiple times already. I'm curious, is there any concept that you think of? Like, is there a time where you should be switching from one mindset to the other? That is somewhat general, as much as we talk about this game under the umbrella of it depends.
You should be reactive when you're ahead. So the way experience works in Heroes of the Storm, you get a scaling amount of experience from hero kills. Like a hero kill is worth the same as a minion wave at level 7, and before that a hero kill is worth less. But you get bonus experience when you're down in experience relative to the enemy team. I think if you're 3 or 3.5 levels ahead, you can get 95% bonus experience per kill. And if you're if you're 3 levels ahead, you'll get 5% experience, but then the other team will get 95% bonus experience for killing you. So the further ahead you are in experience, the worse it is for you to die. But in order to actually do something with your level advantage, you generally have to go like push buildings. And when you're pushing buildings, you're fighting on ground that's very favorable for the enemy team. It's their home turf. They have a fort to play around. And so in that situation, you generally want to only use short cooldown abilities for the push. You want to make sure that you're controlling the flanks, playing reactive to them trying to engage on you, because obviously they want to fight you and you don't want to die. You're playing proactively when you are fighting over objectives. During laning, you can play proactively, but you want to play reactively whenever you're ahead. It is probably the most important time, regardless of what kind of comp you have.
Nice. That's a good concept. I wasn't sure if you'd have an answer to that or not. But so, yeah, I dig that. Well, cool.
I think about HOTS a lot. I will generally have an answer, and if not, I'll just make one up. It's fine.
Well, rad. Well, we want to pick your brain about the current meta. So before we kind of move into that, we do want to thank our Patreon for their support. So thank you, everybody, supporting us over at patreon.com/ITN. You let us put as much time into the show as we do, and also actually pay our guests when they come on the show. I don't know if Kyle told you or not, CavalierGuest, but we will we'll get you covered for sharing your knowledge with us today.
We're professionals. It's all professional here.
I heard that, and that's a first for me, so thank you.
Yeah.
Shout out to the Patreon supporters who make that happen.
We did podcasts with guests for a very, very long time without not only not getting paid ourselves, but definitely not paying our guests. So it's very nice, and we're appreciative of everyone that's supporting us. So we like to share the love a little. So thank you, everybody. And if you like the show and you want to support us, check out patreon.com/ITN, get access to our Discord. Come join us for our patron game nights. And to our most recent patron, Peter Dr. J, thank you. Thank you very much for the support. And now let's get into this week's news discussion, which is mostly a meta discussion, but you get the bumper anyway, folks.
We're on, boys! Ha-ha! Let's liven up this place!
Point me to the stage.
Stay a while and listen.
Gentlemen, how goes Hogger? That's the question. That's the question now. Because we went low and then we went high again. It's almost as if this hero had a learning curve.
No, I'm pretty sure a hero that comes out with a kit that it isn't similar to any other hero's kit ever should be instantly pick-upable on day one.
Really? Huh.
Problem there.
Yeah. You know what? Now you mentioned it, I completely agree. Man, so I haven't played it. I haven't played a ton. I've been splitting my game time like crazy. This is the end of this year is just a cornucopia of things I want to spend my time with. But I have finally decided to hunker down and try and learn this damn hero. And oh my God, Hogger is difficult, but rewarding. Difficult but rewarding is the tagline I would assign to this hero.
That's the weird part about it, is a difficult hero, but once you master a couple of simple things, he's very easy, which I think leads to an overwhelming amount of laziness. Because the amount of Hoggers I see that go, I mean, the bruiser camp's half dead anyway, I might as well just keep spinning. You're like, do something else. Or it's a objective, maybe a Braxis boss, and they get in there and they're like, nah, this is good. I'm liking Hog Wild here. And well, there's a couple seconds between each one. Maybe something would be more effective. I don't. What's your take, CavalierGuest?
Hogger is busted. I don't have another way to put this.
Is this the ultimate?
Not terribly dramatic.
If you're good at Hogger, you should literally never die. And there's not a lot of heroes that have that description. Like Tracer, like a perfect Tracer player would never die. A perfect Medivh player would literally never die. A perfect Hogger player should literally never die. In addition to that, he does camps faster than anyone else in the game, past a certain point, and with a certain bit of geometry. And once you learn how to play him, you'll be doing ridiculous amounts of damage and zoning. I wouldn't be surprised if, Justing played him as a tank or something. That might happen. We don't know. But yeah, Hogger is stupid. and Blizzard has put themselves in an impossible position almost, because as people get better at him, he's going to be dominating probably higher level games. But he's still going to have probably an average win rate at mid-level games. So how do you fix that? Like, you can't just nerf numbers if he's bad at lower ranks. Is he going to be the new Medivh where he's only good at higher ranks?
Yeah, Genji also comes to mind as one of those problematic heroes that never really found a home with the average everyday player, but just soared at high levels of play.
Yeah, so I'm gonna talk about my personal experience. I played Hogger on PTR in customs to find angles to bounce around the map. I found some good rotational angles. It turns out that rotating with E actually isn't worth it, because generally you're rotating to a camp and then you should just instantly do the camp. But my first 10 games as Hogger, I won 9 of them on live and averaged 11 takedowns per game by myself. Most of those kills were solo kills.
When you say rotations, do you mean like you might be able to give a map that if I bounce in this certain spot, I could reach top lane from bottom?
Yeah, so I started a Discord channel in the Nexus Schoolhouse Discord called Hogger Angles, and I invite people to post things that they found, and there are rotational paths you can take using E that safely, 100% safely, because you're unstoppable, take you from certain points on the map to other points. There's a Dragonshire rotation that will take you from the top bush on Dragonshire directly to Dragon Knight, which is pretty good.
That's insane.
There's a BOE rotation that is 1 second faster than running from top bush to bottom bush, but it also, just incidentally, for fun, scouts hard camp. Because you happen to go by. You happen to go by.
Wait a minute. So you bounce onto the enemy half while in transit?
Yes.
That's fabulous.
And you scout hard camp, and then you're bottom, and you're 100% safe.
Wow.
There's a cursed hollow rotation that takes you from mid directly to bruiser camp, which is cool, but again, you generally want to actually use your E when you get to a camp, so it's not actually useful, unfortunately.
I mean, could you augment it in some way that you hit the bruiser camp and then perfectly end? Are there any camps that I could transit and immediately begin the camp with?
Probably. I haven't found one yet, but probably that could be a thing that could happen.
You're making me want to make him more overpowered by letting him cast Loot Horde while spinning.
That would be absolutely broken. I do not encourage Blizzard to do that. He doesn't need any buffs at the moment. It should be noted that Hoggers, when the patch came through, they fixed a bug that was allowing him to still go through terrain. And the way they fixed it was he has a stacking debuff that essentially checks if he's violating terrain boundaries. And if he gets 3 of them, it just kills the E instantly. So occasionally E is dying for no reason when it shouldn't be. So he is actually slightly worse than he should be, and his win rate is still climbing.
Wow. Is there a build, a thing that people should be doing at home, talents they should be avoiding?
Talents they should be avoiding? Yes. So his worst talent probably is brute force at level 4. This talent is absolutely awful. I've tried it. I can't see a single scenario or build where it's gonna be good ever.
Yeah, I have Hot Slugs open right now, and the stats can correlate. 38% win rate.
So the easiest, I don't know if it's the easiest, but one of the most effective ways to build him is to go Bones to Gnaw at 1, because it gives you extra meat, which gives you extra sustain, and 10 armor also technically gives you extra sustain. You go aggro range at 4. This is mostly for the rage generation. It means that you start doing something, and you generate some rage, because it's each enemy hit, and it's increased to 3 rage per heroes, or against heroes. So you can build up rage very quickly when you're doing a camp or something, and that makes you do camps faster. Garbage fire. Primarily, this is for the CDR, but the slow and the damage over time are actually also both very good. Hortipult. Nice. Hortipult gives you unstoppable frames, so it can be used as an escape. It can be used as an engage. It has a short cooldown, and it's a talented D. It's not like these are untalented. So we've already gone Garbage Fire. We've already gone Bones to Gnaw. All of those things now apply to Hortipult.
Well, and there's an important discovery that a lot of people have made this week, that when you cast it, you can choose which location you end up on the other side of the Loot Horde.
Okay, this is news to me. How does this work?
So if you've noticed when you on release cast his R, it doesn't allow you to move it around, right? You can't change where you're going to put it. Normally, when you have something like a Tyrael Q, you can kind of hold it down and move where you're going to put it, right? Mm-hmm. The reason it doesn't do that is because it has a second vector targeted element. If you hold it down,
which is essentially,
you'll notice a little arrow. The arrow is where you land.
Oh, so you're setting your exit.
You can pick which side of the Hortipult you end up on.
Oh, that's wild. Okay. So I hadn't been using on release. So to really maximize the ability to choose there, you should use an on release for this ability.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So what I saw this week, Garrett, if you want to get into it, is that you Hortipult to make the body block on like the Ana, send yourself over the top of that, and then drop the Loot Horde behind where you previously were and smack her into that one.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay.
There's also, this is not talent related, but there's a combo you can do. If you hit someone into terrain with your Q, you can instantly W them, and since W explodes when it hits a hero, it'll always hit because of the stun duration, and then you can E at them. and that will do significant amounts of burst.
Wild. Okay. That is very cool. Although, by the way, every talent you've mentioned right now is the most popular and highest win rate on Onslaught.
Oh, well, okay.
So, yeah.
People are on the same page then.
Which is good, because I did not feel like trying when I was learning him this week. So I was like, I'm just going to blind pick and see how this goes. And it does seem to be working out.
Well, that's good.
As much
as
as...
also why his win rate is climbing, because when I checked like 3 or 4 days after the patch, these were not the most popular talents.
Yeah. As sexy as On the Prowl at 1 seems to be to me. That seems like the thing I would like to take, because passive healing sounds nice. But yeah, Bones to Gnaw is overperforming at the moment with the stats available to us.
Yeah.
So,
and 13, you go Dust Devil. Just armor is good, as it turns out, especially when you're randomly Eing around, because frequently your E's will take you on an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had a game of Augur where I was pushing top on Dragonshire, and Cascon's offended by this. He was on comms with me, and he was like, "That is so stupid. I don't understand why this hero is a thing." And I E'd through their entire base, and then came back to top and left.
Oh, perfect.
So I was trying to like just do some damage to someone who was standing next to the well, and there's the well and the keep right there. So top on Dragonshire, I E'd, bounced off of the keep, hit the well, bounced off the keep again, bounced off mid keep, bounced off mid wall, went bottom, bounced off core, bounced off the wall, went back to top, bounced and ended up on the bridge and just bounced out and left.
I need a meme of the Hogwild graphic with just a middle finger being held out the side, because that's what it feels like. The coolest thing I accomplished while messing around on Hogger this week was watching a Kel'Thuzad chain that had connected stretch and do nothing as I Hogwilded away from the Kel'Thuzad's landed chain. It was wonderful.
Yeah, Unstoppables are a good counter to Kel'Thuzad.
Yeah. It's just very stylish. Very stylish.
And then at 16, you can go Headbanger. This encourages you to land the stun part of your Q, which you should be doing anyway, ideally. You can't really reliably do like a DQ combo, but it should be fairly reliable to follow up on like tank CC. So if your tank's done someone's, then you can DQ, because D has an animation that has to cast before it'll actually produce the terrain. So you can't like instantly do it. You gotta wait a second. And then Secret Stash is very good because, again, talented, but no control is real dumb.
I love it.
You can just click on people in late game team fights, and you'll do tons and tons and tons of damage, and there's no skill involved at all. You just push a button and it does the work for you. It's great.
I mean, who hasn't wanted to turn their hero into Cassia's Ball Lightning?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah. There are some people who really like the W build. So Journeyman's cooking at 1, Dense Blasting Powder, and Kablooey, and you basically just do this combo where you kind of look for where the enemy team is clumping, and then you put a W down right in front of you and Q it, and it just chucks dynamite at them. It's actually substantial amounts of poke damage. And in some sense, that makes it actually a little bit safer. But it's a very different way of playing Hogger, and I think that's another problem to some degree that the hero has, where he's going to have more than one viable playstyle. So you can't if you find a counter to him that makes it so going in is really risky for him, you can just be like, okay, I'm going dynamite build. I'm now a ranged hero. Good luck with that.
16 and 20 seem to have the most competitive in terms of like popularity of picks and also how well they're performing. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because Kablooey is doing quite well and giving Headbanger a run for its money.
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that, because the individual sticks of dynamite that you get from Dense Blasting Powder work with Kablooey. So if the dynamite that you produce by queuing your W with Dense Blasting Powder lands on a hero, you can get the CDR, and you can proc the CDR more than once. So if people are clumping in the backline, you can frequently get into this loop where you're just spamming W on cooldown. I think it's like a 3 or 4 second cooldown, and you're just putting out W's constantly.
Yeah.
Now, my understanding is that Hogger is free to play in the CCL this coming weekend.
Yeah, he was only banned for 1 week, so he will be available to play in CCL this weekend. Obviously, we're scrimming with him this week to see, is he good and competitive? Because good and ladder and good and competitive are not always the same thing. Are we good enough at Hogger to be playing him? It's always a question. Medivh, who is a hero that pretty much everyone thinks is totally busted, there was almost 3 months between Medivh being released and him being played in a competitive game for the first time. So sometimes there's a significant gap between a good hero being released and pros being like, oh, okay, we can actually play him in competitive now. Like, we're at the level where it's consistent.
Are you getting the vibe that this is going to be one of those heroes?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Oh, you got your secrets. You've got your secrets. But my question would be, do you think Hogger can eventually take on one of those imperious, not a tank, but filling the role tank sort of things?
In specific drafts, I think there's definitely some potential for Hogger to be a tank. Tanks need an escape so that they can safely control vision. He has that. Tanks need an engage so that that's reliable in terms of being able to follow up. His engage isn't entirely reliable, but we have seen, heroes like Imperius, whose engage is also not entirely reliable, played as a tank if they're strong enough. His survivability, he's a bit squishy, but he does have wave clear, and one of the things we've seen in the past is when a hero has wave clear, they can be run as a tank in double support comps. That might be viable. It's going to be one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see if anyone, and by anyone I mean Justing, tries to play him as a tank.
Fair.
So let's move on off of Hogger here and talk a little bit about the overall meta, which CCL is having an influence on. What is top tier at the moment outside of our, we talked about Hogger and Medivh, the things that are rare. What are the top bans we should be getting rid of in our home games?
It's always a difficult question. One of the things that I've always said to people is, you want to know what you should ban? Go to Hero's Profile. Or back in the day, it was HOTS logs. Select your MMR and what are the highest win rate heroes on the map that you want to ban on. You should ban those. Clearly, people at your rank are bad at playing around them, and or people at your rank are really good at playing them. People meme on the Kael'thas bans in like silver and gold, but Kael'thas's win rate in silver and gold is really good. It is one of the higher win rates for those ranks, and people don't play around it. People spread bomb. So you should be banning the things that on average you're bad at, unless you recognize the enemy team's names. If you recognize the enemy team's names and you're like, I know that guy's a bad Kael'thas, if he picks it, we're fine. But there's a lot more people at those ranks, so that's not always an option. If you're on an amateur team, I think both NGS and Heroes Lounge have the replays uploaded for the games that are played. So you can go scout the enemy team and be like, okay, apparently they're good at this hero and they're not good at this hero. What do we ban? Well, we should probably ban the hero that they're good at and we feel like we're bad against. There's always going to be variance, right? One of the reasons that top players and professional players are professional players is because they're playing in the game at close to the limit of what we know should be played. We know that this should beat this, and if the other person doesn't know the matchup, there's outplay potential and things you can do to make it harder on them, but they're going to also know that and account for those things and still play the matchup correctly, and you're still going to lose. But at lower ranks, that's just not the case. People don't always know what the matchup is. So if you're actually better at the hero, you can get away with stuff you shouldn't be allowed to get away with. But you should look at the average, I think, for your rank, not what higher level players say. Data always beats sort of the subjective opinion of a lot of people. Like, Kael'thas shouldn't be a problem, and sometimes he is.
Well, what about something extreme, like something that really was a direct correlation was supports or healers? Gone are the days of your forefront Anduin. It was all Brightwing Stukov forever recently. Has that changed with Medallion, or should we still be favoring those as the top meta healers?
So I'm going to answer this with data. So I have a Stats of the Storm is a program that processes replays and gives you essentially your own little heroes profile type thing with actually quite a bit more data available. And I have a Stats of the Storm database that I run that's just the CCL games to sort of track popularity. And Stukov has been present in 78.9% of CCL Season 1 games. And he has a 45% win rate.
Oh,
Brightwing has been present in 69.7% of the games and has a 44% win rate. What's popular is not always what's good, and popularity also sometimes indicates that it's being picked early on in the draft. And sometimes when things are picked early on in the draft, it's relatively easy to counter them.
Interesting.
So Anna has a 26% win rate or 26% popularity and a 63% win rate.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I was like, wait a minute.
Anna's usually picked relatively later on in the draft. So part of one of the aspects of drafting that is very underrated is the heroes you pick early cannot be easy to counter.
So that's why I have to play so much Johanna.
Yes. There's a strong correlation there.
What are those heroes? If you could list them, as many as you can think of.
Some of the heroes that are relatively hard to punish are stuff like Hanzo. Hanzo has such insane range that it's just hard to get to him, right? You can try to dive him, but he's further back than most other heroes. He has his D to get over terrain. It's relatively difficult to be like, that's a Hanzo. I'm just going to go kill him. You just kind of have to sit there and eat the damage and try to kill someone else in the team comp. It's very hard to punish a Medivh because Force of Will plus portals. You fundamentally have to play the game differently when you play against a Medivh because Medivh plays the game differently. And that's not only a draft burden, but it's an execution burden, right? You have to do everything differently when Medivh is in the game. So all of your non-Medivh practice is just, it's out the window. Chromie, very similar to Hanzo, high range. You need some way to punish that, and it's not always easy. Diva just has very few losing offlane matchups. So if you pick her early, it's not like they can counter pick it and have a winning matchup. But even the matchup she loses, they're still like 55-45 or 60-40. They're like not a hard loss. So even if they pick a winning matchup, you're like, I still have a Diva. Johanna has many favorable tank matchups. And because she has wave clear, having wave clear in the tank slot makes the rest of your draft more flexible. Assuming your Joe's actually clearing waves. I once tried to clear waves on Tomb as Johanna and my team yelled at me and said I wasn't tanking. So that was unlucky. There's heroes that are hard to counter.
What about if I may fire some at you?
Sure.
Gazlo.
So Gazlo was an enormous stat stick at one point after his rework. He was overtuned. He had too much damage, too much survivability, too much health. Even when he was overtuned, he couldn't double soak. So one of the frequent requirements of an offlaner is that they're able to double soak. And his sustain is chip sustain. It's not like it's insane levels of self-healing. And since his nerfs, we've almost exclusively seen Gazlo in the 4-man, which is where I think he belongs. I don't think he's an offlaner.
Chip sustain?
Yeah, it's small amounts of sustain as opposed to like big bursts of self-heal. Like Urel's Q heals her for a ton. She's essentially her own healer. Whereas Gazlo's laser, it doesn't really heal him for that much. And, he has to proactively use his level 4 talent. If he goes the shield on turret, like he has to shield damage with the turret. So he has to put the turret down at the right time to make sure that the shield gets value. He can take small amounts of chip damage and heal it up. But if he takes chunk damage, he has to tap or back or get a heal or something. And there are offlaners that chunk him. So it's frequently a problem.
Cassia.
Cassia is basically, in an average comp, the highest single damage hero in the game, competitively. So even though she has short range, it's compensated with armor. You can draft things that keep her alive, and she will carry games.
And the final one I want to check on, I assume Junkrat is in the similar right-wing Hanzo, or Chromie Hanzo camp of just being heavy range.
Yeah, heavy range. He also, hybrids are really nice in general. So Junkrat has significant amounts of sustained damage with grenades. He has some displacement and some CC, and that's nice too. He has significant amounts of sustained damage. And then he also has Riptire, which adds a burst option. It's really nice to have heroes that can do both. Like Greymane has sustained damage from his autos, and then he has burst from either bullet or go for the throat. And it's nice to have hybrids, because when you pick a hybrid, you're not revealing anything else in draft. You could be going for another sustained damage dealer. You could be going for a burst damage dealer. You could be going for, SE. You haven't revealed much of the damage structure of your composition.
Makes sense. I appreciate the rundown.
Sure. I mean, drafting is fascinating to me. I've spent significant amounts of my time the last 5 years just theory crafting potential comps and draft orders for like revealing the minimum amount of information to the enemy team.
So before we leave the meta, but also still sticking with some of the CCL talk, we got a question from Sage, who wants to know, like, who assumes we are now seeing heroes patch adjustments based on CCL, and specifically calls out the Brightwing and the Imperious nerf, and then goes on to say, I am excited to see how the medallion removal impacts high-level play. Maybe melee assassins will come back? Hopeful question mark. They have been struggling from what I can tell. What are your thoughts?
So it's a multi-part question. Blizzard's development pipeline generally is longer than like 2 or 3 months. So I don't think we're seeing those nerfs based on CCL specifically. We might be seeing them based on win rates at other ranks, or maybe even win rates in QM. You never really know. There was a patch to Murky once. Murky was like totally balanced at the time, and I discovered he had a 56% win rate in QM only, and they nerfed him down a little bit. So Blizzard looks at way more things in terms of balance than most people think. Obviously, but everyone sees professional players, right? So they see Brightwing being picked, and they're like, they're totally changing this because Brightwing's being picked in CCL. It's not normally the case.
Yeah, I think Brightwing might be leading the conversation there more than Imperious, because Imperious has clearly been in their sights for most of the year.
Yeah, so I don't think that's the reason, although there is, I think it's a happy coincidence to some degree. If anyone at Blizzard wants to tweet and tell me I'm wrong, please do. So yeah, as for melee assassins specifically, they're not in a bad place, most of them. So as of this week, 8 out of 10 melee assassins have been played. The mission ones are Valera and Butcher. Butcher's in a weird place in that he's not really a hero until meat is stacked up, and it can be hard to get the meat stacked up. Valera counters specific heroes in competitive, but not only do you need to have a perfect draft for her, you actually need a Valera player, which are not in tons of supply when it comes to CCL, as it turns out. We saw Valera played in in-houses because Kevin was in there, and Kevin has a Valera one trick at the moment. He just loves spamming the hero. And there were good drafts for her, so he was like, okay, I'm gonna play this. The problem that melee assassins have that people don't respect enough is here are Kira maybe is an offlaner in some contexts. There's high debate about whether or not she's even viable as offlaning. Maev, not an offlaner. Valera has been played as an offlaner once or twice with a hat only, so has an Abathur. Samura's played an offlaner, fine. Alarak was played an offlaner at one point, and everyone was like, this is stupid, we should play him in the foreman. Butcher hasn't played as an offlaner, but again has his own problems at the moment. Murky played as an offlaner. Illidan plays an offlaner. Kerrigan's played as an offlaner, and Zeratul can be played as an offlaner. And we have seen more of those heroes that can be played as offlaners than we have as the heroes who can't, because a composition in Heroes of the Storm is tank, ranged, offlane, healer, flex, and literally any hero can fit into the flex spot. There's 90 heroes in the game, and all of them are competing for the flex spot in a given draft. In a double tank meta, frequently the flex is another tank. In a double bruiser meta, frequently the flex spot is another bruiser. In a double support meta, frequently the flex is another support. So you need to be quite exceptional in a draft on a map and with a hero's kit to win the draft spot versus 90 other heroes in terms of both pick priority and in terms of, I'm actually going to make my player practice this thing because it could be good. It's very difficult to maintain your skills on a wide hero pool. So even though theoretically any player could fit in any hero could fit in the flex slot, you actually need a player that can play it, and flexes already have the biggest hero pools. So
that makes sense.
Yeah. Interesting stuff. Well, let's keep the questions going, because Kyle, you pulled a ton of them down specifically for CavalierGuest here. Although, oh, cool, we've got clarification in the chat room by one AZ Jackson saying that the CCL meta sometimes trickles down everywhere else, so it can be hard to say it's exactly one part of the game or another that drives the change.
That is true to some degree. When people see something on stream, they start playing it. But that takes a while because, there's probably tens of thousands, a couple 100,000 people playing HOTS weekly. It's probably, like in the Western Hemisphere, it's probably a couple million monthly play at least a game. But a lot of people, a surprising number of people only play AI. A surprising number of people only play ARAM. A surprising number of people only play QM.
Yeah.
And they never watch competitive HOTS. So in order for it to quote unquote trickle down to them, it has to trickle down from the people who watch HOTS, take that information to ranked. Someone sees that one in ranked, they go to QM, they run into one of these QM players that only plays QM. They say, oh, that's good. And then,
Yeah. Jackson's saying that in Brightwing's case, he'd say that CCL was involved because she was very low involvement. And then CCL made her very high in a short amount of time, which was interesting because I was about to say, I bet it depends from hero to hero. Medivh, you've mentioned Medivh multiple times. I bet, you see awesome Medivh play, you go try Medivh once and you go, okay, maybe I'm not going to jam a bunch of Medivh games this weekend, but you try Brightwing, it, might actually click because I think of the ease of introduction into that hero's kit. And you go, yeah, maybe I will slam a ton of Brightwing games this weekend.
I actually I interviewed Doa this week on Inside the CCL, and we had a funny conversation where he was like, yeah, Brightwing's easy. All you have to do is soak and then pay attention to your team and Xeon on them when they're about to die. So she's easy if you understand macro. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. I guess maybe other MOBA players don't have the similar level of experience.
That's fair. I'm trying to pick specific examples. I think if you compare Brightwing to Medivh, I'm gonna just say, yeah, Brightwing's easier without a doubt.
I mean, definitely Brightwing is easy.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with ETC, Raynor, Malthael. Like we all have these. Well, in comparison, it's easy.
By comparison, yes, you're absolutely correct. But let's actually get to the CavalierGuest specific questions. Starting off with, why is first pick Cursed Hollow a free win?
It's not a free win. So this was a question.
The questions don't lie, CavalierGuest. This is fact. Why is first pick Cursed Hollow a free win? No,
so Bad Benny is the coach and was an EU HCC tank player, was in my chat, and he's the coach for Granite Gaming, and we had a significant win against Granite Gaming on Cursed Hollow from first pick. And I currently think it's very difficult, assuming you understand the map, to lose the draft from first pick on Cursed Hollow. It is a map that I've studied more than any other map in terms of win rates and what won during HGC. So if you understand the map, it should be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to lose from first pick. Because there's a limited number of heroes that do the exact things you need, and there's a limited number of heroes that counter those heroes. So
what do I need? What should I first pick that makes me win all my Cursed Hollows?
See, it's not. This refers strictly to competitive, to be clear. But during HGC, if a team, there were three things: you needed boss control, merking, and a global. And a team that had 2 out of 3 of those would always win against a team that only had 1 or 0. And basically, it comes down to you need merkability to keep your lanes pushed out. Because if they're getting merc camps on cooldown and you're not getting your merc camps and you're not clearing their camps very quickly, they're going to get free shove, and the free shove allows them to have vision control in lanes. Vision control in lanes means they pick up the tributes for free. It means you don't know when they're going to go do boss. Like you lose so much information. So you need merkability. The global means that you can never get stalled for so long at tribute that you just end up behind, which is a frequent problem. Fnatic used to run triple global on Cursed Hollow, and Fnatic has the fun record of getting a keep during the enemy team's curse because the lanes were so shoved. They just gave up. They stalled every tribute for as long as they could, but they never actually tried to get one, and they got a keep during the enemy team's curse because the lanes were so shoved. It was actually insane. And then if you do all of those things perfectly, boss will eventually end a game. Eventually, boss will be the thing that actually ends up ending the game. So you need to draft for boss control, and certain things control bosses better than others. So you need to have those factors, and then certain things counter those things. And if you know all of the levels, that's what you're looking at.
And because it's a full comp in a professional environment, there's no like one hero you could say that is the first pick that equals all this. It's the combination that covers those jobs that equal the win.
Yes.
That's frustrating. I understand it. It seems factual, and I would agree with it. But I want simpler answers in life.
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to come to from simple answers. I can give you good answers, but they're never.
It's a good answer.
That's what we brought you on for, though, is to be a little bit of a foil to what we try to package as simple answers. Wake wants
I try to package information nicely, but it's hard. HOTS is a complex game. I can't make it easy.
Well, I mean, you need it. Like you figured out though. You're making content based on your complicated answers. It's a wonderful thing. It's not necessarily a thing you should fight against. Wake wrote in and wants to know, I think most of us agree that the whole, quote, lack of community education thing is basically a meme to make our excellent communicators and content creators salty. Boy, do I agree with you, Wake. I feel like you're right. You wrote this to me, and it worked because it's getting included. But it does hint at something true. The information is out there, but it's not being accessed by the vast majority of the HOTS community. Most of that information is going to the players who are already knowledgeable and enfranchised. I've never heard. I always hear disenfranchised. I've never heard anyone say enfranchised.
It's
What
a good word.
ways could we, the community, the content creators, and or the HOTS team itself, help solve this issue?
You read that with some compassion.
Don't be mean to people who don't know stuff.
Thank you.
That's a good answer.
Thank you. You said you didn't have simple answers.
I mean, well, this is actually not a hard problem. People, if you tell someone they're an idiot because they don't know XYZ, they've already stopped listening to you and probably reported you and blocked you.
Oh my God, you just solved politics.
Maybe. Well, we'll see. But like, I will say things like, hey, Mathael, could you soak top lane? Because that's the off lane. It's hard for us to go there. And Mathael will be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And he'll go set the off lane. And like, if we win the game, frequently at the end of the game, players will be like, that was a good idea. Do you have more tips like that? And I'm like, here's a link. Be nice to people. Most people actually don't want to be bad, but if you tell them that they're bad, they're going to be like, screw you. Whereas if you tell them, hey, you could be doing this better, or not even better in general, but for us specifically, you could be doing this better, right? Because then it's not, oh, you're bad. It's just, oh yeah, in this situation, this might be a little bit better. And people will improve. And if it goes well, people will be like, oh yeah, that was actually good. Get people excited about the depth and complexity of HOTS. Don't tell people HOTS is simple. Blizzard tried saying, this is a casual MOBA, and they lied, for the record. HOTS is not. HOTS is not simple. Every map is different. They
used a marketing technique.
Every map being different already makes the game incredibly steep in terms of the learning curve, because you need to know the timings on every map. And they tried to simplify it. They tried to make all the timings on every map. Oh, at 3 minutes, something's always going to happen. It's still hard. That didn't actually make it simpler. You need different things on different maps. In a professional meta where everyone had infinite practice time and therefore had infinite hero pools, I don't think you would see the same heroes prioritized on any map. I think every map would actually have different priorities. There's a compromise in professional play between what is practiced and what is good on a map, but not what is perfect on a map. And it's an important distinction.
To fart off completely.
So,
what if would Heroes or maybe MOBA esports be more interesting if we played it like football, where we had like a team of 20 people and we would get more Valeras because you got a Valera main on your team and you would just cycle them in as you need them for this upcoming game.
I have made this suggestion. In fact, I made the suggestion for CCL because it's a 6-player roster. And I said, hey, can we swap players after the draft so that we can recruit some one tricks and swap them in? And they said no. But this suggestion has been made. It is difficult. Obviously, football has more money, so having people on the bench, so to say, is fine. And in HOTS, there's just not enough money for that to be a reality. But I think that would make the game significantly more interesting. And it would be an interesting practice problem as well, because like you'd want to practice with everyone on your team, but whenever they were playing, they'd only be playing with 1 or 2 different heroes, so it'd be very specific draft-wise. Maybe you'd have 2 full rosters and you'd divide the maps in half or something. I don't know. There's lots of ways you could approach it.
Chat says then you'd have 10 people not wanting to play tank.
People don't mind tanking in competitive. Tanking in competitive is great. People heal you when you take free poke because you're getting vision. They follow up on your engages. Playing tank in Stormlink can be like a nightmare, but playing tank in competitive is usually pretty fun. Most tank players don't mind playing tanks in competitive. And a lot of tank players won't play tanks on ladder for this exact reason.
Well, you mentioned Justing earlier, and Misfit wrote in and wants to know how Justing's style of drafting affects him and his team's prep. Do they look at it? Do they consider it? Do they analyze it? He went on to say, I am a huge fan of Justing and am always curious how his drafting affects other teams.
So Justing also played during HEC, and several HEC teams made the point that if you scrim against Justing's teams, you're not scrimming against any other team. You're practicing only to play against Justing's team, which I think is pretty fair. If you understand that he's decompiling the draft, so normally you have a tank who does 4 different things. He's saying, okay, what if we had 2 heroes? What if we had one hero that did 2 of those things and another hero that did 2 of those things? And if we do that, this hero has a weakness. So we're going to draft this 3rd hero that fixes that weakness. Right? He's taking each individual tool that a given composition needs, and he's trying to distribute it across the entire comp and then look at the weaknesses that exist and be like, okay, how do we fix that weakness? That helps improve drafting across the board because it tells you what tools are actually essential and which tools are optional based on map and comp. If you look at the games, it does affect teams' prep against them, and any team that doesn't understand Justing style of drafting is going to lose to them unless they play significantly better. That's the advantage of Justing style of drafting.
Gotcha. Well, moving right along, Dax wants to know, in your opinion, what would be or is the best way to be looking at your own team's replays?
With a coach telling you what you did wrong.
What do you want to like self-promote there? What website can people book you?
But having an external perspective is very helpful, but it depends on what your problem is. Like if your problem is we're getting flanked a lot, look at the replays and be like, okay, who should have been standing there to make sure that didn't happen? One of the things that I like to do is watch the replay from the enemy team's perspective and the enemy team's vision and see every time I showed, and was that showing justified? Was I clearing a wave? Did I need to be clearing that wave? Did I specifically, that hero, need to be clearing that wave?
That's interesting you mentioned it. I've been trying to show less, and I don't even know why. It's just something I have suddenly become aware of, and I've been trying to be a little bit better about it, but we haven't really taken a dive into it.
Yeah, but watch the enemy team's vision. Like, what is the problem? Figure out the problem and watch the replay looking for that. Because there's always mechanical things you could have done better. And the problem comes you don't know, right? The problem is when you look at the replay and you're like, I don't know, they won, they played better, and you actually don't know the problem. That's the point where you need to reach out to someone else who knows more about the game. And in that context, yes, I'll self-promote a little bit. We do offer coaching over at patreon.com/Nexus Schoolhouse. And one of the things we do is replay reviews and try to point out your mistakes and figure out, that problem for you of what are we doing wrong that we don't see.
Hey man, we don't coach here. You're not eating our lunch at all. Go for it. So yeah, that's interesting. So it sounds almost like, you said, watch for, like, know what you're looking for. So do you frequently go into your own replays knowing what you're looking for, or do you also do you find yourself making discoveries while watching the replay of, oh, that's another thing I should keep an eye out for?
I frequently make discoveries about something that I should have noticed during the game and didn't. And so there's always this compromise. Like if you can sit in the bush and look at the minimap all game, of course you'll see every time someone shows Envision, and you'll be able to call rotations really easily, but you're doing nothing else. If you do nothing but look at your character all game and you know the mechanics of that hero, you should be able to execute those mechanics really well. Like, I'm always maximizing the damage to the wave on Diva with the way I stand, and I'm always standing perfectly on camps to maximize this damage, and I'm always lining up my hogger angles perfectly. But then the camp gets invaded and I die because I wasn't looking at the minimap while I was doing all of that fancy perfection. There's a compromise.
Are you reading my mind right now?
So frequently, I will go back and replay and be like, I should have noticed that. I need to make sure that I did this. And I actually I did an exercise once. You can look up beats per minute videos on YouTube. And I played a 12 beats per minute video. And every time it made a noise, I looked at the minimap. So it's every 5 seconds. I would look at the minimap, and that got me in the habit of just looking at the minimap regardless of what I was doing, which is something you need to be doing if you don't want to die to ganks and you want to understand where people are moving around the map. In competitive, you generally have someone whose job it is to be looking at the map all the time and calling out rotations. Everyone calls it if they see something, and a lot of times it's one person that's their job.
That is a very attractive suggestion for me.
Making it someone else's job?
No, the beats per minute video.
Oh.
Or get beats per minute tracks to train yourself. Yeah, I had never considered that, but that makes a lot of sense.
It works. I can vouch for it.
I've used one for a very long time on Lunara Wisps because I always forget to put out my next Wisp.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah.
That's interesting. I always struggled with drums until Rock Band, and then I was just like, I'm just going to play it and not give a crap about what I'm doing with my left arm. And I'm just going to make sure I hit the bass beats because I had trouble with my foot. And it totally broke through and let me do the pat the head, rub the belly thing. And I bet this would make me check the minimap more often because of
focusing on one thing is extremely underrated in terms of practice. So a lot of people this is why one tricks are good, by the way, tying back to an earlier conversation. One tricks are good because it takes a lot of practice if you're trying to do everything at once to be good at everything, because it's not focused. If you want to really improve very quickly, you should make your practice as focused as possible. So Kai Berries is a streamer, and I'm on a team with her along with Kyle. And Kai Berries had a problem in a game last night. And afterwards, we went into a custom and did a drill where it was just interrupting ETC Mosh as Lucio. And we just did it over and over and over again. And at the end, she was able to consistently interrupt Mosh as Lucio, which is something she couldn't do before. And I don't know how many games it would have taken her to, not only run into Lucio often enough, but how many Moshes do you usually see per game? 3, 4, 5, maybe more with Encore, but it's not efficient practice-wise. Make your practice as efficient as possible if you genuinely want to improve.
The idea of running drills, how many people actually go out of their way to do that, right? So imagine how quickly you could improve if you did it just a little bit here and there. I say this as someone who has never run a drill in Heroes of the Storm ever, and I should probably take my own advice. Although right now I'm still just I haven't really mentally moved on from your Hogger Angles channel that you mentioned much earlier, so we'll get back to me at some other point. But fascinating stuff. Gib writes in and says, learning a broad set of heroes may not be my thing. Almost as if Gib knew exactly what concept we would be leaving when we read their question here. I have the brain space, but I'm too busy, re old, to lock in muscle memory for the rock, paper, scissors of every solo lane matchup. Is there one or two Swiss Army knives I should master if I'm forced to draft the solo lane in Storm League? So basically asking for good general solo laners to draft.
So the reason certain solo laners are drafted in competitive is because of ganks. They're just really hard to kill. In Storm League, rotations don't happen. So depending on your rank, and people are going to flame me for this, but depending on your rank, you can just draft a ranged that you're comfortable playing and solo lane with that, and it's fine because people won't rotate and kill you. Lunara has self-sustain at 4 with Siphoning Toxin and a sustain and a vision mechanic with Wisp, so it makes it really hard to kill. Phoenix has self-sustain kind of with a shield. And most melee solo laners at most ranks don't know how to play around vision, so they'll just stand in the wave and let you hit them, and you will eventually win that. In order to beat a range as a melee solo laner, you need to be constantly playing out of vision and waiting for them to step up and do things and then hitting them so that you can actually negate the fact that they are ranged. W build Gul'dan has a really good ladder win rate if you go look at win rates, and most of those games are solo lane Gul'dan. And it's just he has insane self-sustain. If you actually want to not get flamed by your team, Sonya can run it down really hard, has self-heal and infinite map uptime as long as you don't take too much free chunk.
Wait, was the flamed by your team for the Gul'dan or the Sonya?
For the Gul'dan.
Okay. I was like,
if you don't want to get flamed by your team...
Did I miss something somewhere? Okay. All right. Fair.
You don't want to get flamed by your team, you can draft Sonya and infinite map uptime because she doesn't have mana, self-heal. You can just spin on people. People generally won't save CCs specifically to interrupt your spin in a lot of ranks, so you can just literally spin on people and win.
There's also other solo laners that will give you even more whirlwind value by either being two things like Rexhour or spawning more things to spin on like Zool.
Yes, this is a true statement. Diva, because even if you die, you only get half a death, and then you can walk away. Frequently is the case, far more than it should be. But yeah, I would say Sonya, Diva, but if you don't mind being flamed by your team, then drafting a ranged offlaner is totally fine as long as you don't think the enemy team's going to rotate and try to kill you.
I did.
It's such a... The avoiding flaming is such a tough puzzle, though. Because I won't flame the Valeera who really picked. But Valeera's not going to cover the solo lane. And now with the melee becoming full, that solo lane would probably better serve with like a Raynor or something in it. But Raynor's going to get flamed in that position, not the Valeera, who snowballed this existence into being.
Well, I think in that scenario, you just pat yourself on your back for not being a negative Nancy and flaming the Valeera and try to make the best of the inefficient lemons you were just given to make lemonade with.
I'll say this, having an external drafter for our CCL team on Oxygen means that even if the draft is the problem, the team always goes into the game with the mindset of, okay, how do we win with this draft, as opposed to, man, this draft sucks. Why did you draft this XYZ? And then that person's irritated. If you can be like discussion at the draft screen, but then the game starts loading and you're like, okay, well, this is our draft. What do we do? You will win more games. Don't get hung up on the draft, because again, drafting doesn't necessarily matter that much in Storm League. How you play and matters significantly more.
All right, we're getting some questions from the chat room. Not Insane wants to know your status on healers. They just lost Medallion. Overall, they don't have damage, wave clear, or basically any tools to carry.
One of the major things that healers give you is map uptime. So let's say your Joe steps up to clear a wave and uses D, and the enemy range is like a Tychus or something, and for some reason she doesn't blind it. Well, actually, she probably since exposed to the waves. So the wave is now instantly clear, but Johanna has taken some free chunk. She doesn't have tap up. She got a globe, but if she tries to clear the next wave without her D up and with the damage, there's a good chance that she could die. And you heal her, and then she can just go clear the wave. Healers can do a lot just by keeping people on the map, as opposed to having to map back. Malfurion also can do this with mana. So, like, Malfurion can do this unique thing that actually helps map uptime more than any other support to some degree. In addition to having a semi-global heal with the way Q plus W works. It's true that most of them don't have wave clear. They do have several of them have playmaking heroics in terms of engaging mechanics. So like Sapphire on Deckard can actually work as an engage. Sleep can work as a counter engage. Lornado can work as a pick mechanic. Polymorph is an insane setup CC. It's point and click, so it's easier for your tank to follow up on it. Yeah, so focus on trying to keep your team not just alive, but active on the map, and try to have a big impact in team fights, because team fights are where healers should have the biggest impact.
Rad.
So they've got enough as it is.
I think so. Again, every role has been one-tricked from bronze to GM. One of the support players that did the climb did it mostly on Lucio, and it's not like Lucio has insane damage or wave clear. But what he did was he interfered with the enemy team's rotations. So he was constantly finding them, scouting them, dismounting them, and making them slower. And if you make them slower, your team is now relatively faster.
Interfere. Okay. I like that, because harass, bother, annoy, they're all negatives. What I need to do, like, I want to become a really, really good Junkrat, but I don't want to be a jerk. So I need to find that perfect word for my brain that I can make it sound like an elegant thing I'm doing. Oh, I bounced them into a trap. What a beautiful play I've performed.
There you go.
It's all about the sales pitch sometimes with you, Kyle.
You gotta convince me, man.
Kyle needs to be marketed to. I'm sure you've already noticed this, Cavalier, playing with him.
But I'm also the exact person who does the whole, like, you told me I'm wrong thing, and I go, oh, defensive barriers up. Like, I need more information. Otherwise, you're on test right now.
I think most people would rather feel that they are being helpful than being called out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ask someone to do something. Don't call them a jerk for not doing it without being asked.
But last night, we had our first loss in Heroes Lounge, and I think it was a really great growing opportunity. I had several conversations with our main DPS afterwards. I'm going to be doing some more aggressive taking over, in a sense. I'm going to be shot calling. And it's going to be an interesting thing, because we've been trying to do the whole... which team did you say does the compartmentalized shot calling?
It was Ballistics. Ballistics did not have a centralized shot caller.
We've been trying to do that, and it's awful. I hate it. It's really hard to do. And mainly because maybe it's too much dungeon mastering with Dungeons and Dragons, but I like having all the information in my head and working on the pieces. But I've been terrified to do so because I've got two very high rank, very knowledgeable players on the team that I'm going to have to say, no, I'm engaging right now at. But I'm mentally ready to tell CavalierGuest we're engaging right now, even if it's not statistically right.
I mean, I always ask if I should come. Well, that's basically what the offlane should do, is be like, hey, I'm losing this matchup. The other offlaner's rotating. Or, hey, I'm winning. I can rotate. Should I come? I don't know what's going on before, man.
You're off lane. You're special agent. If you say you're on the way, I'm like, whoa, like, what a great gift. You shouldn't have. You didn't have to. But thank you for being here. That was great. And I'm also going to take our other Porky, our wild card. I'm going to put him in secret agent status. I'll be managing the 3-man. We'll be doing the things that have to happen. And the two of you just show up if you wanna. You come in and out as you may. You're gonna go take a camp? Cool. Don't need to know about it. Just do your thing. But thank you for being here.
Kyle Ferguson announcing his solo laners coming to the stage like it's a surprise guest at a concert. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage.
Offlane Sonya with Leap. Have you seen this, everybody? Wow. Comes on out, hands a microphone.
And the duet, I guess it would be like whatever a 5-stack would be called. But well, awesome. Well, I think that covers everything. We hit almost all the damn questions, and we're about at time. So I think this is as good a place as ever to wrap up this episode. CavalierGuest, my God, this was great. I felt like I learned so much, but mostly I'm going to go focus on angles and get a metronome into my personal play. But before we start our long-winded outro, as our guest today, where can everyone find you? What would you like to promote?
You guys can find me at twitch.tv/CavalierGuest. Currently, the only thing I stream regularly is Inside the CCL every Monday, where I recap the weekend CCL games and try to get someone interesting on to interview. So far, we've interviewed Michael Udall, Chilrog from Chili Mountain, Turk from Crowd Control, and Doa. We also, Zane Hyde and I are making educational content over at patreon.com/Nexus Schoolhouse. If you support it, you get the content a week early. Otherwise, it's just freely available after that on the Nexus Schoolhouse YouTube. There we go. I got there. Yeah, I think that's everything. I also like to give a shout out to Auction Esports. They've been really great. By far the best org I've worked with in terms of coaching. And it's been great working with them.
That's awesome. Well, everyone go check that out. As we are on our way out, I want to thank our patrons one more time. Thank you so much to everyone supporting us over at patreon.com/ITN. If you want to support the show, that is the best way to do so. So go check that out. Also, a huge thanks to our Patreon producers, Declan H, Cheesy Bob, Chris K, Mike C, and Sean B. Thank you for the support, you five. You can catch us live Thursdays, typically around 3 p.m. Eastern Time, right here on twitch.tv/AMoveTV. You can follow the show on Twitter, find out when we're going live and when new episodes get posted at ITNcast. But other than that, Kyle, this isn't your only Heroes gig. It's not even your only content creation gig. Where can everyone find you?
You can find me a number of places. Check out the YouTubes, youtube.com/Kyle Ferguson for VODs from my stream, replay reviews. But you should certainly check out, with CCL in mind, the youtube.com/Heroes Hearth, where I get to interview players in the CCL. It's an awesome thing. This week, I interviewed a Murky player. And I would suggest every single Murky on the planet go watch this video, because Twitch chat was not having it. They did not enjoy what Murky was taking the wrong talents. He was doing all that. No, Murky was functional. Murky was doing exactly what it needed to. And this game was won because of Swamp Grota's Murky. So go take a look at that video if you want to know how to really play the Puffer Man.
Sick. Well, folks, amove.tv is where this podcast and every single other one that I produce can be found. Also would like to hit potslogs.com. It'd be lovely if you could go there, use it, get the uploader, get your replays over to us. Follow me on Twitter at Garrett Art, and of all of the things over at emo.tv, I don't know, throw a dart. Let's Talk About Star Wars is back, and we'll be back until The Mandalorian Season 2 wraps up. So go subscribe to Let's Talk About Star Wars, wherever podcasts can be found, and hear me talk about something other than a video game. That's right. There's more to me than just Blizzard games. Anyways, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. CavalierGuest, thank you again so much for joining us, and thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you guys for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
It was our pleasure.
Oh, we'll be having you back. But until next time, everybody, good luck and have fun.
Take care.